problem. I'd like to introduce you to Anthony Pacello. He is the program lead for Precourse, and he is here to share some awesome content with you. Anthony, we are recording, so it is being recorded. You are on camera. Please smile nicely. And everyone, please give Anthony your devout attention. Anthony?
Hey everybody, you must be the PRP students. I'm Anthony. I'm the program lead of Precourse for the SEI program over here at Hack Reactor at Galvanize. So today, what I'd like to talk to you all about is the big question, what is Precourse? So I've got some slides that I'm going to share with you, and we're going to go through a little presentation. I hope not to bore you, and I hope that your future 6-week experience is not boring, because that's where you're headed. So I'm going to pull up my slides, and we'll talk a bit about what's ahead of you. By the way, before we get started, just a quick about me. I am a previous student of Hack Reactor. I went to the San Francisco Immersive back in 2016, December of 2016. Before I came to Hack Reactor, I was a physicist. I worked in Silicon Valley, working on accelerators, particle accelerators, and medical devices. And I switched from that field over into software engineering because when I moved to Silicon Valley for that job, I met a ton of software engineers and started hanging out with them and started to learn that their job was a hell of a lot more fun than mine. And so I got really interested in what kind of work they were doing and started searching for boot camps. And that's how I found Hack Reactor, just like many of you, just a little while back. Fast forward, I wound up becoming a teaching assistant at Hack Reactor, and then I became a full instructor and did that for about a year in San Francisco. I've written some of the curriculum for the software engineering immersive that you're all targeting, and took some time off, came back to Galvanize, spent some time working in the PRP space, and then made my way over to Precourse. So I've been at every part of the pipeline of the Hack Reactor program and system. And I know a ton about it, so really happy to bring you some of that experience today and tell you about what we're doing over here in Precourse. Okay, let me share my screen. Awesome. So Hack Reactor Precourse, this will be the next step in your journey to the software engineering immersive. Today, we're going to cover a few things. 1, your path to a career in software engineering. 2, the question, what is Precourse? 3, we'll talk about the Precourse curriculum. 4, we'll talk about deliverables and deadlines that are involved in your Precourse experience. 5, we'll talk about the kinds of support that you'll receive from staff and students while going through the Precourse material. And 6, we'll talk about how to get started with Precourse. If you're not tired of the word already, you're going to hear me say Precourse a lot of times in a row. And at some point, I'm going to start questioning if I'm saying it right because I've said it so many times. Okay, your path to a career in software engineering. So if you've ever visited the Galvanize website, somewhere on that site, you've probably seen this thing. It says, where do I start if I want to go to the software engineering immersive? Well, you start with an application. When you submit that application, we receive it, and most folks wind up becoming enrolled in prep. All of you have elected to join premium prep, which is a better version of prep. It's the same material, but you get a whole bunch of staff support from teaching assistants, tech mentors, cohort leads, all the wonderful roles at Galvanize. When you complete prep, you move on to some third step. We call it the TAA for short, the Technical Admissions Assessment. Step 3 is you have to take an interview or an exam to see if you can gain admission to the program. And that's what you're all training for right now. Step 4 is once you pass that Technical Admissions Assessment, you're going to receive some sort of contract and sign it. And when you do, you're going to be enrolled in a whole new program. It's some intermediary place, like a purgatory almost, a place where you're waiting to join the immersive and training to become eligible and qualified to succeed in the immersive. We call that thing Precourse. When you finish pre-course, you are then cleared we call you eligible, and then we enroll you into the actual SEI bootcamp, which is the goal. If you look at the Hack Reactor website, at least when I made these slides about 4 months ago, there was a similar diagram, and it looked like this. It shows Hack Reactor prep as your first 5 to 7 weeks. That's pretty true, and it's optional. But if you don't do it, you better prep pretty hard on your own. Then we have Precourse, which is labeled as a self-study program, and that's because Precourse, until about 6 months ago, was an entirely self-study program. We would email you a bunch of GitHub code repositories with a bunch of notes inside and a little bit of instructions. And there would be a total of 5 to 6 assignments, and you would have to work through them 100% autonomously without any help from anyone. There was no help desk, and there were no office hours, and there were no instruction staff. It was just you and these 5 repos. And as you worked through them, it was kind of a sink or swim situation. It was almost like a filter to see who was really going to be capable of surviving in the SEI program. Today, we have changed things a little bit and added a ton of support. I'll tell you about that a few slides down the road. But the thing that is still true about this slide and about this section is that pre-course, the actual work, will take a focused effort. And when I say focused, I mean like you are at your computer with no distractions, actually working through code. It will take about, I want to say 120 hours of focused effort to complete everything in our pre-course curriculum. Here it says 90 to 120. I think 90 is a little optimistic, and I think 120 is pretty realistic. When you finish pre-course, again, you get dumped into the SEI program, which is the exciting thing that you're all training for. And that lasts 11 weeks, plus a solo week, plus an extra week to go through the career services portion at the very end. And at the end of that experience, you go out into the job search, which is done off-site, though you're being coached by a career coach team. And you're out there applying to real jobs and doing real interviews until you get yourself a real job. So if pre-course is the next thing you have to do in a 3-phase process, I guess I said 5 phases before, but 3-program process, well, what is it? Here's what it is. I like to think about the actual SEI program, the big boot camp, as an educational product, but I also think of it as something that immerses students into a simulated work environment, a simulated professional engineering work environment. And the reason I frame it that way is because as soon as you enter, you're going to be treated like you're an employee for the most part. You're going to have deliverables and assignments. You're going to be expected to be in certain places at certain times, whether we're remote or on site, whether it's a lecture hall or a conference room over video. You need to be prompt and on time to all of the things that you go to. You need to behave and act professionally as if you were an engineer at an actual company. And the kinds of work that you'll be doing is engineering work. From the very first day, you won't just receive lecture, but you will you'll spend most of your time working with a partner, on an actual challenge, which really does map to a similar experience to what you would do in the workplace. So I think of SEI as a simulated work experience. And through these 13 weeks time, you are training and practicing for how you will behave when you do get to your actual job after the immersive. That's why it's an immersive. So if that's what SEI is, then what is pre-course? Well, pre-course is the first stage of that SEI experience, and it delivers 3 things. The first is onboarding, both technical and cultural. When you're in premium prep, you are about 1/3 of the population of folks who will enter pre-course. And so you will have had early exposure to our culture and to some of our technical systems. Like you all know how to behave in Slack and how to use the help desk. You know about getting some one-on-one time with a seer or a teaching assistant or with a tech mentor. So you're a little ahead of the curve on technical and cultural onboarding, but there's a whole bunch more stuff we're going to introduce on the technical side as to how your system works and how to use your computer as if you're an actual software engineer. So there will be onboarding. Second, we have a full course for you to work through. It's preliminary and prerequisite to the SEI program. If you do not understand all of the material inside the pre-course curriculum, then you're going to be in big trouble in the immersive. And so we spend a lot of time working through that material, and these days providing support so that you can feel assured that you do understand everything before entering the SEI program. Super important that once you get there to SEI, that you're fully prepared, both code-wise and just, oops, sorry, there's a fly in front of my face. We'll edit that out. It's important that you're up to speed on your JavaScript and your HTML and CSS and on how to operate your computer, because if not, the immersive moves really fast and that'll be challenging and you might have a bumpy road ahead. Finally, the third thing that Precourse delivers is a robust community of peers. Again, you've got a little bit of access to that right now, but this community group is going to be a little different. In this group, every single student who's entering the immersive, the SEI program, on the day that you are, whether that be in New York or Austin or LA or San Francisco or Seattle or wherever else, Boulder, Denver, Phoenix, and more. They'll all be in the same place at the same time for a very brief wrinkle in time that lasts anywhere for you from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the day that you enter. This is a great opportunity to meet tons of folks who are going to be software engineers with the Hack Reactor brand stamped on them. And you're going to want to know these people 2 years after you graduate, because the friends you make at Hack Reactor become the internal referrals you get at jobs down the road. If you look at the admissions process page on the Hack Reactor or Galvanize site, you'll see something like this. It says, Precourse takes place after you pass the TAA and decide to join the immersive. Through another 120 hours of study, you'll push your skill set, your comfort zone, and your autonomy. So it's not just your JavaScript skills. You are also going to feel uncomfortable. So warning, this should not be a surprise. You will feel technically and culturally uncomfortable for a little while as you change into a prospective software engineer. And it's going to test your autonomy. Autonomy is one's ability to effectively and efficiently produce a work product in a self-directed way, even when there is maybe a boss or a manager at your workplace who is going to give you some guidance. The degree of autonomy that you have is the degree to which you can operate independently while following some system of constraints and rules in your environment. And so the SEI program is going to heavily rely on you developing autonomy, because a software engineering career heavily relies on autonomy. You are very rarely told what to do. You are most often just told that there's a problem and that it would be really convenient if you would solve it. And so it's important that we start leveling you up in autonomy as you enter pre-course so that you survive in SEI. Final sentence, pre-course allows students to hit the ground running on day one of the immersive and to make the most out of their time at Hack Reactor. Yep, absolutely. Knowing the bare minimum requirements of pre-course gives you a foundation that is strong enough that you can build actual products in the SEI program. And so you're going to want to be strong when you enter, because the stronger you are upon entering the program, the better questions you can ask while you're there, and you can really optimize the access that you have to such talented instruction staff while you're there. So that's the goal. In Giphy format, here is the real goal. When you enter pre-course, you will look like Homer on the left. When you exit pre-course, we're hoping you look like those happy folks on the right. On the left, Homer doesn't know where the any key is because there is no any key. You aren't going to know how to use your terminal. You won't know how to use a test suite. You're going to be pretty bad at JavaScript, even though you might feel like you're getting better now. You're good, but you're going to be better. You might not know how to use GitHub or how to make commits or how to store code in version control. And you might not know what closure is and scope. But by the time that you make it through pre-course, you're going to be really comfortable at building very basic small programs, which will really set you up for success and hopefully make you happy. So what's in the curriculum? We're going to learn more than just JavaScript and HTML and CSS. There's other stuff too. And one of the big ones is environment setup. So you're going to create a very basic but important and well-structured, we call it a dev environment, a development environment. So that means like all of the programs and applications and tools that you use while developing actual code. Right now, you're doing the majority of your work in a web interface. And so like you're typing code into a website, or maybe you're using Replit once in a while, but a dev environment consists of an editor like VS Code, plus a version control system, plus the terminal of your computer. It also includes things that you use to collaborate with others like Zoom and Slack, but largely it's the things where you're writing actual code. You're gonna have a debugger, you're gonna have a browser with lots of development tools inside, and the whole big picture of all of these things working together is a dev environment. And we're gonna teach you a little bit about that. You're also gonna learn about version control with Git and with its partner website, GitHub, which is a place where we store code and different versions of our projects. That's gonna be important for you to submit your work and to store your work in case your computer lights on fire. You can always just pull down the work from the cloud storage that stores all of your code. Think about it as like Dropbox or Google Drive for code projects. The developer tools for Chrome is going to be a big topic, but we can kind of say that that was in environment setup. And then we're going to teach you more advanced levels of JavaScript, including things like automated testing, higher order functions, closure, scope. We're going to talk about using JavaScript in the browser to add and remove HTML elements to and from the page that you're developing, and to manipulate what we call the DOM, the document object model. And finally, we're going to cover a pretty advanced topic called recursion, which is a algorithmic tool that is going to blow your mind a little bit for the first couple weeks. And then it's going to feel like riding a bike at the end, but it's tough at first. It's when a function invokes itself over and over again to a point where it stops. Okay. In addition to the actual content and curriculum, there's personality traits that we're going to be developing, and not so much in an instructed way, but just by force and through necessity. So I already touched on autonomy, so I'll skip that one for now, but just realize that the nature of Precourse is that it was for 8 years a very self-directed course. And so even though we're going to put some guardrails up and some bumpers on your bowling lane, we're still going to rely on you being pretty autonomous. You will be the owner of your success. Whereas in PRP, it's very premium prep, it's very structured, and there's always someone to check in on you. In Precourse, we have a team of tech mentors, full instructors, but we rely on you to flag things yourself when you're feeling uncomfortable or unsure about a certain concept. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. We'll be monitoring and watching, but we'll expect you to come to us when you're stuck. Another thing we're going to work on pretty heavily is time management. We have 3 modules. You're familiar with modules. We have 3 in our Learn cohort, and each of them has a deadline, and each of them has deliverable work, actual assignments that need to be submitted by an actual time. Those assignments need to be complete, and they need to demonstrate your understanding of the topics inside. And they have to be done by a specific deadline. We'll talk a little bit more about deadlines in a future slide, but the short of it is there will be a deadline for your work. Should you anticipate that you are going to miss that deadline, provided you entered Precourse early enough, we can always extend your deadline, but only if you treat it like a real deadline at work, which get missed all the time, by the way, in software engineering. The way to handle a deadline is to flag it to anyone who's a stakeholder of that deliverable and say, hey, in 4 days from now, there's a deadline to do X, Y, and Z. And for reason ABC, this isn't going to happen because there's something going on in my life, or because I'm struggling with this part of the project and I'm going to need more time, or because I have an office hour booked for the day after the deadline and I'm relying on that to unstuck myself on a certain part. And so if you communicate about that thing proactively in advance, the deadlines are flexible. But if you miss the deadline and don't communicate about it, it's unacceptable to the point where it could be grounds for removal from the program. And so the time management is a skill to develop by necessity. And it's really easy to do since deadlines can be flexible as long as you're on top of your stuff. Trait 3, grit and perseverance. I don't have to do anything to ensure that your grit and perseverance goes up in pre-course, because it's just going to happen by working through tough assignments that make you want to pull your hair out. There will be moments where you'll be really stuck and not know how to move forward. And it's in those moments, based on how you react and respond, really more respond, not react. It's in those moments that grit and perseverance will develop. I'm sure you're currently working on problems that are making you pull on your hair, but you'll actually pull it out in pre-course. And then hopefully you get it back in, or it grows back. But as you work through these assignments with a deadline and with the tight timeline, you'll be able to rely on us to talk through some of the pain, but those moments of pain are really going to be growing pains for you. And we really want the grit and the perseverance to develop before you enter SEI, because there won't be time to develop it there. You got to be ready, because if you are afraid of the red text in your editor, it tells you that there's an error. You're going to see a lot of it all day, every day for 3 months. It's just part of the day-to-day life of writing code. And so we want to desensitize you to that as early as possible. Thing 4, your technical communication, whether that be how you communicate about code to a technical instructor or to a peer, how you do that verbally over Zoom, or how you do that in writing in, say, Slack or an email or on a help desk ticket. We're going to really focus on your ability to communicate clearly, because when you get to SEI, you are going to be pair programming with another student in the immersive, and your experience for 2 full days working through an assignment is going to be based heavily on whether you can communicate clearly to your partner about what you're doing. If you can't, they're not going to understand what you're talking about. You might argue. You don't want any of that. You just want to be able to say a thing clearly when it's related to code, and have somebody say, oh, I know what you're talking about. And now that I know what you're stuck on, I can help you. We're going to focus a lot on that. And thing 5, kind of related to grit and perseverance, we're going to develop a sense of calm in the face of really obnoxious red text on your screen that makes you want to go crazy. It'll happen naturally over time for most. Okay, the deliverables. What are these deliverables? So there's a big question attached to anytime there's deliverables and deadlines. This question is, am I guaranteed admission to the Hack Reactor program after I pass my technical admissions interview or assessment? And the answer, frankly, is no. You're going to get a student enrollment agreement. That's what you get for passing the TAA. And the student enrollment agreement is going to be long, and you should read it. And in there is going to be a section that describes what it takes to be considered admitted in full and enrolled into the SEI program. And the last marker, the last thing that needs to be completed in order to do that, think other than making a deposit, is completing all of the pre-course material in full and demonstrating understanding of that material. And so you do have to complete everything in pre-course in order to make it into the SEI program. We allow a total of 3 enrollments in pre-course. However, I think 75% of students, maybe 80%, make it through on the very first try. And then the rest overwhelmingly finish the second try. And those who defer from their first attempts to their second attempt is usually because they were a late add, or somebody who just had a really rough time with one assignment that slowed them down, and it just made sense that they should have some more time in pre-course. So heads up, that happens sometimes, and you should make your plan and your schedule accordingly, knowing that that could happen. It's not a big deal if you don't succeed your first time in pre-course, other than it changes your life plan. It doesn't mean that we're going to tell you you can't join Hack Reactor. It just means we're going to say, not yet. You need a little bit more time, because if you enter today, you might have a bad outcome. At the end of the day, we prioritize successful outcomes after you graduate more than anything else, because 1, that's what you're here for. And 2, that's what drives our business, is being able to produce students who exit and get jobs right away when they enter the job search. And that's really what differentiates us from a lot of the other competing programming boot camps out there. So if admission is not guaranteed, then what am I accountable for? You're accountable for demonstrating readiness for a successful start in the immersive. How do I do that? 1, you complete the 3 major deadlines and the deliverables that are inside of them 100%. You're going to have test suites. You'll get green check marks when you pass a test. You have to pass all of the tests and complete all of the prompts in our Learn environment. Thing 2, demonstration of full comprehension of the pre-course curriculum. And there's an error on this slide, and it was the one I was supposed to find and edit before I came in here, and I forgot to do it. I apologize, but I'll correct it verbally. In that demonstration section in the middle, there's 2 bullets. The first one says 5 programming assignments assessed for both functionality and code quality. That is true. The 3 deadlines, take those 5 assignments and split them up. It's like 2.5 in the first deadline, and then 1.5 in the second deadline, and then just 1 in the final deadline. However, there's a second bullet that says final readiness assessment there for certain campuses only, and we have eliminated that. There is no final readiness assessment anymore in pre-course. Those used to be administered by the campuses themselves. It was only certain campuses who were doing them, and we decided to just totally standardize that process and eliminate it because we found that it wasn't yielding the results that we were hoping to find, and we were just spending a lot of time doing something for nothing. And so we removed that. So no fear. You take 1 assessment called the technical admissions assessment. You take it at the end of premium prep, and then you're done with assessments. The real assessment then becomes a 6-week experience and a bunch of code that you write and a bunch of interactions that you have with staff members as we get to know you and gauge your understanding of what you're working on. Okay, finally, this looks like a small one, but it's a big one. Organization and timely professional communication. We are definitely monitoring and tracking on this. And so you want to make sure that you're doing things on time. You want to make sure that you are kind and polite, because we don't want to let you enter the SEI container unless you're pleasant to be around, and in a professional way. You know, it's nothing to do with your personal preferences or personality, more so about your delivery of self in a professional setting. Very few people fail this part of the total list of items here, but it happens once in a while. Things that you can do to ensure that this goes well is when you get onboarding forms, Google Forms in an email, click them and fill them out promptly by their deadline. Make sure that when you're setting up your programming environment, your development environment, that if you're stuck, you ask for help and you chat to us about it, and we get it set up and organized. Make sure that you participate in our Slack community and you talk to other students in the public channels and help each other, because we're there largely to be a community and to help. And finally, and most importantly, when you're asking for help through help desk and office hours, we have some very strict procedure and protocol on how to do that. And we're going to expect that you abide by the guidelines that we put in Learn. And so please pay attention to those and follow them. Let's quickly talk a little bit more about the pre-course deadline so that there are no surprises. The pre-course calendar is different than premium prep, or any prep, and it's different than the SEI program. Premium prep and the SEI program are very structured. There is a calendar. In SEI, there is a calendar so stringent that like every hour of your life for 12 hours a day is blocked out for 3 months. And you know exactly where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing. It has a start date and it has an end date, and everybody starts on the same day and everybody ends on the same day. But in pre-course, we're in this middle space where really we just need you to get through the prerequisite material and show that you're ready. And that means that we have kind of a flexing schedule. Students onboard into pre-course on a rolling basis. And so typically there are 4 weeks worth of enrollment time and then another 2.5 weeks of just work time. And students come in like half of the total group comes in week 1, and then we get another 20% in week 2, another 20% in week 3, and whatever's left in week 4. And that's because students are taking their TAA at different times. And as soon as you finish and sign your student enrollment agreement, as long as we've already started that pre-course cohort, it makes sense to let you enter right away, so you have the most time to prep. The pre-course material itself takes at minimum 2 weeks to complete, depending on how much of a maniac you are and how many hours you want to put in per week. Think about it, it takes 120 total hours of focused work, give or take, plus or minus 10 hours. And so you could do that in 2 weeks if you worked 60, 70 hours a week. If you join us early in week 1, we have more time to give, and so you'll have a set of deadlines that fit in a 3 to 4 week period. If you enter in the second week, we still have plenty of time to give, so you'll have deadlines that fit in a 3 to 4 week period. If you enter in the third week, we're getting a little down on time, and so you might wind up with only 2 to 3 weeks in your deadlines. And it's not to be unfair, it's just that if you're entering that late, it's probably because you really want to make it into the very next immersive for whatever reason that is in your life, in your plan and schedule, and it's just sooner than it would have been for a week 1 or week 2 ad. And so there's only so much time left, and we give you the most that we possibly can. And then in the fourth week, kind of the same deal, except for all of you, I imagine that you are probably targeting the November immersive, at least most of you. And if you're targeting the remote part-time program, that one starts in early December. But because of the holiday schedule, we have kind of a unique situation. The holiday schedule makes it so that pre-course is 1 week shorter this round. And so we're only going to enroll students in week 1, 2, and 3 this round. And that's just because the start date of the immersive is sooner. And that's that. So nobody will be in this low to medium risk category. You'll be in either high or medium high if you're looking at the chart, which is a good thing. Anything else on this slide to hit? Your deadlines are determined by the week that you enter the immersive. I'm sorry, that you enter the pre-course program and community. And so week 1 students actually have different dates than week 2 students, if that wasn't clear. And then final thing to note, an important thing, is just because you start on day 1 doesn't mean that you have until the final day of pre-course to do your work. The deadlines, know in advance. If you finish your TAA and you sign your student enrollment agreement and then enter pre-course, we onboard you right away. Unless you tell us that there's a life event going on in that first week, we're going to expect that you're starting as soon as you enter. And so your deadlines will start from that day. And sometimes we hear students say, I thought that I had until the day right before the SEI program to finish all the pre-course work. And I'm here to tell you in advance, here to tell you in advance that that's not true. You get this 3 to 4 week period if you're week 1 or week 2, or a 2 to 3 week period if you're week 3 or week 4 to do all of the work. And that final deadline might be before the end of pre-course. We take that extra time at the end to do review, to do extra credit problems, to really robustify some of the work that you've done on the previous assignments. We might make revision requests as we code review your work and ask you to improve on certain things. There's also solution videos to watch at the end of pre-course. And there's events toward the end that are for community development, and there are events at the end that are run by your SEI campus for onboarding things like an SEI orientation and a technical setup check-in to make sure that your dev environment is truly set up. And so please know in advance, the majority of the work is done in the first half of pre-course, and then extra stuff comes at the end. Should I be afraid of this, meaning the deadlines? No, totally not. This is our way of making sure that you are ready to not fail. And so if you don't do well in your first round of pre-course, you didn't really fail anything other than starting the immersive by this date. But it doesn't mean anything negative for you other than we're just going to give you more love and more time and more support until you are ready. So there's really nothing to be afraid of, and you should embrace the deadlines and take it as an opportunity to practice for what work will be like one day. This is the safest place to fail. I hope that you don't, because I'd like to get you in the immersive as fast as possible so that you can go get paid as fast as possible. But but please don't fear the deadlines and don't let anxiety kick in. It's not a thing to be anxious about. It's a thing to be excited about. We're getting toward the end, so hang on tight. Support in pre-course. Will support be available? Yes, absolutely. More than there ever has been ever in the history of our pre-course experience. When I did pre-course, there was none. It was just me in a room in San Francisco, paying way too much rent, just hanging on tight, crying sometimes, trying to solve things on the mirror in my bathroom as if it were a whiteboard. Today, whole different deal. Here's what you get. There's a new kind of help desk available. You premium prep folks are unfortunate in only this one way. You are fortunate today to have a really great help desk where your help desk tickets get answered right away, probably like 15, 30 minutes. Your help desk tickets are probably getting picked up on average. And then you have a conversation immediately with a technical mentor or a teaching assistant. Because premium prep has hours and a schedule, and there's like class time and non-class time, but pre-course is totally asynchronous. We are open 24/7, so that's a nice thing. You can file a ticket anytime you want, but the caveat there is like we are not always as a staff team available to answer your help desk ticket, and so help desk becomes more like Stack Overflow, more like a forum than it is like an immediately gratifying experience where you hit the button and it happens. So same bot, same Slack tool, the help desk bot, except when you make a help desk ticket, you should expect that there's up to a 24-hour turnaround time on the response, which puts you in an interesting situation that we quite like. It means that if you really want to get the fastest possible support, it means that you have to write the best technical question possible, which is really good actually as an instructive exercise. You need to document the problem that you're having really well, provide snippets and samples of code, provide an explanation as to what you think the behavior should be, then provide an explanation of what the actual behavior is, show your error message, express your interpretation of the error message, and then somehow give us a way to reproduce the error on our own. In case we pick up the ticket 6 hours later while you're sleeping, we can still answer your question and then say, if you have any other follow-up questions about this, please respond. And we can have an asynchronous back and forth conversation. There's 1,000 different reasons that it's like this. One, we really do believe that it's good for your growth. Two, it helps us serve 300 students at a time, all in one environment, and keep you all together so that you can all meet and interact and network with one another. It also puts you in a position where it's harder to be lazy, where in premium prep, I'm not accusing anyone, but it might be easy to ask for help before you truly need it. And before you get a chance to be forced into a situation where you actually have to debug your own issue, someone's there to help you, and then they do help you. But in pre-course, we kind of like the idea that you could be frustrated and stuck and be waiting and not really be patient enough to wait for a human to come help you, and then maybe give it a second shot. And in that time, you might wind up solving your own issue by doing some research online, which increases your autonomy and your grit and your perseverance in a way that's really positive, and also helps you prove to yourself that you don't need your hand held so much. And so we think this is a very positive thing. Now, help desk tickets are not always answered 24 hours later. A lot of the time it's like 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes it's 6 hours, depending on the number of tickets in the queue. And so don't expect 24 hours every time, but be accepting of it if it does take 24 hours. Also, if you hit us in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., we're likely not awake. And so you might get an answer in the following morning. We're open 6 days a week on the help desk with Sundays off. Okay, that's that about the help desk. There's another form of support called office hours. Office hours are one-on-one meetings with a technical mentor. Technical mentor means full level instructor at the immersive, same thing in pre-course, same level, same folks. These meetings are 20 minutes long. They're bookable on a Google Calendar. You will see every tech mentor's office hours available on the same calendar. And so you can select who you'd like to be with. We host office hours at different parts of the day. We have early morning, mid-afternoon, end of the afternoon, and then someone working on the evening shift, and we have some on the weekends. And so no matter what your plan is, whether you're still working full-time or whether you're working part-time or whether you're free all the time, there should be some tech mentor who's available to book your office hour appointments. And if there's not, you can always write us an email and request a special time and we'll make it happen. These meetings are over Zoom, and so you should come prepared with your question in advance. Maybe even put in the comment or the description of the calendar event what your problem is to help the tech mentor prep in case it's a thing they haven't seen in a while. And it allows you to discuss live. Help desk mostly happens over Slack in text. Office hours are live over Zoom. Finally, it's not so much a new feature anymore because it'll be our third cohort running this, but we've added a new thing to Precourse that is done nowhere else in the entire pipeline. Please don't expect this thing in SEI. It wouldn't make sense to do it there. You're moving so fast that you'd never have time to go revisit the results of this feature, but in Precourse, it's a great thing because you're still in a place where you're developing your foundation and getting actual written feedback in a formal setting on some of your code is really good for you at this point. And so we do this thing. And this thing is called professional code review. When you're a professional software engineer and you want to submit code into the company's organization or organization's code base, you don't just get to hit the button and load that code up. You load code up into a special place called version control, where other team members will be forced to read your code and put actual comments for revisions on it so that you can correct things that might have been working but just weren't great. And there's a back and forth asynchronous communication process about fixing this code to the point where it's good enough to go to production. And so we're going to do that with you on 2 of your 5 repositories or 2 of your 6 total assignments, the second one and the third one. And so you will submit your code, you'll submit a GitHub pull request, it's called. We will receive that pull request and go into the GitHub website, and live inside your code, we're gonna make comments all over it and mark it up, just like an English teacher would put the red pen all over your essay. And we'll give you feedback, not only on if your code is working or not, you'll know if it's working, but on how it could be working better, more efficiently, how it could be more readable, how it could be cleaner, really just how to level yourself up so that you have an actual feedback loop. We think this is a really good thing. It's a really time-intensive thing, so we hope that you will read our feedback. You don't have to make the revisions that we request. We are just requesting them for your experience so that you will see how much better your code could have been, not to tell you that you're not good, but to tell you how you could be great instead of just good. I'm a big fan of this process. So that's the staff support, and here's the student support. We have 3 channels in Slack. One called Precourse, which is just a general discussion place. You can say things that are like, "Hi, I just joined Precourse." Or you can say, "Man, this is really hard. I would like to vent about this here." Or you could say anything like that, general stuff. We also have virtual office hours, which is just a place for students to support one another. We think this is great because with 300 students, it's better to have a many-to-many conversation rather than a many students to one instructor conversation. It's not better. There's a time and a place where that's better and where it's appropriate. So this is a place where you can ask well-formed questions to other students that are conceptual and get some feedback. It is not a place to post code. We do not post code in the virtual office hours channel. What we post there is conceptual questions like, "I'm studying Clojure right now, and I think I understand it. My interpretation of what Clojure is this, blah, 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 blah. Anybody else think that I'm wrong? Or does anybody else have a better way to explain this thing?" Or another way to approach virtual office hours might be, "I'm working on problem ABC right now, and I'm building this function. High level, my strategy is to make a results array, iterate through the input array, and for each item in that array, do things 1, 2, and 3. I think this is a good strategy, but before I implement it, I thought I'd check in and see if others are thinking the same thing." So you can talk about code without writing out an actual solution. And that's the kinds of things that we expect to see in the Virtual Office Hours channel. Finally, there's one more channel. It's called Tech Resources, and that is a place where you can post helpful links that you discovered in the internet while you were doing your autonomous code writing thing. Things you might want to post are really useful sources of documentation, really helpful videos that you found on YouTube or Vimeo or in some blog article, maybe an article, Medium article or something like that that was helpful, or a blog post or whatever thing that you found out in the wild that was instructive to you. If we share our collective growth experience, the sum of all these many parts will be larger than the magnitude of your individual part, and we like to do it together, and this is how. There's also a really great programming memes channel, which is hilarious, and you'll probably enjoy that quite a bit. Okay, the final part of support in Precourse is that we run these optional bonus, like totally off the cuff, not planned community development events. They're not required, but they're fun and you learn a lot of cool stuff there. It's not about technical content most of the time. It's mostly about like programming or software engineering culture. So we've run events like what it's like to work in the tech industry. That's one where it's me personally, and I go through all the different jobs that I've had in the tech industry since graduating Hack Reactor, and I talk about things like what the interview process is like and what the work culture was like at these places. And I've had a really wide variety of experiences, and I've picked a different type of environment each time, so it's a great way to get a survey of the land. I've worked at a really small company, a medium-sized one, a big one, a mega company, and I've run my own contracting business, and I break down what it's like to live each of those lives. I've also done the live thing in person and the remote thing remotely. The next one, sometimes we do how to succeed in the Hack Reactor simulated work environment. That one's fun. We usually run that one when folks have a lot of questions about what the day-to-day life is in the immersive. We just did one for the first time called systematic problem solving, which is where we go over a really great problem solving process to solve problems that you actually don't know how to solve yet. We'll probably continue running this one because it went quite well. We have one called Noob, common cringeworthy anti-patterns of the Hack Reactor novice. This is a place where it is technical. We go over a couple different patterns that we are hearing are being observed by the instruction staff in the SEI program, where they are, you know, in a nice way, complaining to me that why are students doing this thing all of a sudden? So we cover the patterns, or anti-patterns we call them, you know, bad code behaviors, things that stink in your code. We call those code smells. For instance, if you tried to iterate through an array with a for in loop, as you have probably recently learned, that's not the way to go. That's for objects, not arrays. Finally, we always do one live coding session at the very end for folks who have made it to the end of pre-course. Lately, we've been doing a solution live code for a web app that you build in pre-course, which is a clone of a Twitter feed. That one's super fun. And we just get on live without prepping, so you can observe how we would do the assignment as professionals. And you'll notice that we have to reference documentation and look things up as we go. And you start to get a sense of, oh, even people who are good at this still get stuck. It's kind of like live streaming on Twitch, except for code. If you know what that means, awesome. If not, ask your neighbor. Okay, and final thing here is that we have some campus-specific Slack channels. So like we got a separate channel for each campus in case you really want to spend some extra time getting to know the folks that you're going to be with in the immersive in advance. So, okay, I know we're running long on time, Kathy, so I'm going to wrap this up right now. Thank you for your patience. How do we get started in pre-course? It's easy. Take your TAA and pass. Don't overthink it. You're going to do great. Go in there, take what you learned in prep. If you're doing good in prep, you're going to do good on your TAA. When you pass your technical admissions assessment, you are going to get a student enrollment agreement from your enrollment advisor. Read it, sign it. When you sign that, we in the pre-course team will be triggered to onboard you, and you will either be onboarded within 1 or 2 days of signing the student enrollment agreement. Pretty good about doing it within 24 hours. or you will be onboarded 6 weeks prior to your immersive start date, whichever comes second, I think. Whichever is closer to the start date. We can't onboard you if pre-course hasn't started yet, is the point. And so as soon as you sign that agreement, you'll either get onboarded right away or on the very first day of pre-course, whichever comes first. I should just read the slide, whichever occurs later. When we release pre-course to you, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get a bunch of emails. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 of them. You will get a welcome email that has a big blurb of text. The big blurb of text is going to have a bunch of links, onboarding forms, things to download. Make sure you do every step. Then you're going to get an email from Learn, and that email is going to say, hey, you've been added to a new course. So there'll be in the top right corner of Learn, there's a drop menu, and there'll be a new thing in that drop menu called Precourse. You'll get a third email that has a list of your 3 deadlines and the dates and times. We do it there because deadlines are unique to the individual, and so we can't post it in Learn. And then you may get an email that says, welcome to a Google group. We only use the Google group for like mass emails, and we have one for each deadline group. But we might deprecate this next round, so don't be alarmed if you don't get that email. We might just start emailing you directly. And that's it. This slide isn't important. So we can conclude. So in conclusion, 100% of students who make the most out of their pre-course experience have a positive experience in pre-course. To make the most out of it just means fully engage with the program and participate with us, and make sure to always be focused on delivering. And if you should do that, you'll have a great experience. Pre-course is what you make of it, so please make a whole bunch out of it. And I'm excited to have you join us and have a great time learning to code with all of you. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing. And there's 5 minutes, I think, left on the calendar. If Kathy wants to allow it, we can do some Q&A.
No, yeah, absolutely. We have 2 questions that have been going while you were speaking. They're related. What date for the November immersive does week 1 of pre-course start? And the second question was, has pre-course already started? So it's kind of the same question.
Okay.
What date for the November immersive does week 1 of pre-course start?
For the November immersive or for the December remote part-time immersive, whichever you're in.
Yeah.
It will start on October 5th, and the onboarding emails will go out toward the end of the day around 4 or 5 p.m.
And the next question, so in answer to Sean's question, it hasn't started yet. And Thomas, the answer is October 5th is when week 1 would be. Graham is saying, so let's say I passed the TAA. You said I have 3 attempts to pass pre-course. Actually 3 attempts to pass the TAA. If I fail the first pre-course or second, do I need to retake the TAA? Did you say there were 3 pre-courses?
I said that you can enroll in pre-course 3 times.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I clarified the word fail. It's not a fail. It's a you didn't finish, because it's not a test. It's just you're not done yet. You need more time. And so if you re-enroll in pre-course a second time, we will ask you to start from the beginning, because we want you to go through it in a certain period of time right before the immersive starts, but it's not a fail. It's just hey, we needed more time to make this happen. So if you enroll right at the end and it just winds up not being enough time, just consider it a warm up for your second attempt. Almost no one does all 3 attempts. It's like really small 1-digit %, and it's usually because there was like a life event. So we really think that you should only be allowed to join twice, but I fight for the idea that, like, you know, you could be stuck in California wildfires for a month, and then that wouldn't be very fair if we didn't let that count. So we added an extra attempt. The TAA is separate. I think you also get 3 attempts for that.
You do.
But pre-course is 3. It's 3 enrollments.
Antoine's question, should we wait to conclude all pre-course modules before signing student agreement and starting pre-course? No, I can answer that one, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, it would be impossible to do that, because you can't join us in pre-course unless you have signed the student enrollment agreement. You can always void your student enrollment agreement if you don't like it anymore. then you just can't be enrolled anymore. So no worries, you can cancel it.
Daniel wants to know, Anthony, have you ever been told you look like Lin-Manuel Miranda?
Oh man, I don't know who that is. And
Oh
now
my
I feel
God,
remote.
Hamilton, Anthony,
Oh,
Hamilton.
Hamilton? I don't know. I
Yes,
gotta
the
look
guy
that
who
up.
created the musical Hamilton. That's
No, no
Lin-Manuel.
one has told me that yet, except
Well,
for
you've
you.
been told now. You've been told now. How awesome is that?
If you don't know, now you know.
Austin wants to know, do you pay for the immersive before passing the pre-course?
You can just Venmo me. I'll make sure it gets taken care of.
No, don't
Uh,
do that.
no, you pay a deposit, but you don't have to pay the deposit to get enrolled in pre-course. You just have to make the deposit while you're in pre-course before you enter the immersive. So the deposit, I believe, don't quote me, but historically it's been $2,000.
That's the last I checked. That's what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
Shannon, when you say find the immersive, I think you mean find. I think you mean find booking the immersive, or booking the TAA. Booking the TAA, which is admissions.galvanize.com, which you also find in every single kickout. All the links, every single kickout. Is there a pre-course syllabus available online? Shay is asking.
It is not. And that's because there is no like actual written syllabus for pre-course. It's just organized in a Learn course. I can tell you high level what the topics are. The topics are automated testing using Mocha and Chai, basic algorithms and manipulation of basic data structures like arrays and objects, just on a higher level. Then we do higher order functions, which is a big part of pre-course. Higher order functions are functions that receive a function as input and or return a function as output. And so they have this name that I believe has been scaring a lot of folks, but higher order doesn't mean harder. In fact, we only do things as you progress in code to make coding easier. So don't be scared by the term higher order function. And then there's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript / jQuery to make a basic web app in your browser. And then there's recursion. That's the order that the major topics come in. If you're curious about prepping in advance, which sounds like that's where that question is leading to, it's a great book you could read. You just need the first 6 chapters. It's free online. Eloquent JavaScript.net is a great book. Check it out. There's a whole chapter on higher order functions, and you'll probably love it. And you can also check out modules 4 through 7 if it's still available. Kathy, is that still a thing?
Yes, modules 4 through 7 are still a thing.
Yeah, check those out. They're not required, but you'll definitely get some early access to ideas and topics that are in pre-course, and it'll help you out a whole bunch.
Okay.
So if you have the time, hit that.
So a couple of things. One thing on that is that modules 4 to 7 that you can access and see in Premium Prep are there for people who take the TAA and are waiting for their results. So yes. I encourage you, if you haven't yet taken your TAA, to stick with modules 0 through 3. 4 to 7, you can see them, they're visible, they are not hidden, but they are there for people who have taken the TAA, waiting for the result, and want to work on something. So then they work on 4 to 7. Or they're waiting for access to pre-course, so they work on 4 to 7. So I encourage that. We are 2 minutes past time. I would like to get all questions answered, but anyone who feels they need to leave, please feel free to do so. This is being recorded and you could watch the rest of it later. Graham said week 1 is October 5th for pre-course. You're saying if we need more time, we just essentially push to the following available immersive, ? Essentially November to January if we're doing full time? ?
Yeah, so it requires approval from me, from whoever is the program lead at the time in pre-course. And so if you're missing deadlines routinely and you're not participating and things like that, the deferral could be denied. But as long as you're participating and working hard and you're just not hitting the mark on the schedule and you do need the extra time, we're happy to process a deferral, which means that you move from targeting, in this case, you would be targeting November and then the next immersive starts in January. So you would just change your start date. Your student enrollment agreement would get voided and you'd get sent a new one with new dates on it. And then it would just be as if you were originally targeting January instead. You get offboarded from the current pre-course at the point of deferral. And then when the next pre-course cohort starts, you get onboarded into that new one and you start over from the beginning, except now you've done some of the material before. And so you can fly through the beginning part a lot faster.
So there's 2 more questions before I get to those. There was a question about eloquent JavaScript, which your cohort mates put in the chat. But we talked about that book in prep, Eloquent, Eloquent, JavaScript. And what Anthony's sharing with you, if you go to eloquentjavascript.net, you can get a bunch of chapters for free. But if you Google it, if you Google it, you'll find the free version of that. Fabiola is asking, any tips for applicants with non-technical backgrounds?
Yeah, just keep being you. You don't need a technical background in order to do well at Hack Reactor. It doesn't hurt, but it doesn't necessarily inhibit you by any means. I was a physicist. I was great. You might think, well, I'm not great at math. Isn't coding mathy? I was really good at math, like real good, all sorts of math. And I got rocked by Hack Reactor. And it was not about how much technical background you have. Like, you're learning a new thing, even if you were technical in some other thing before. So just approach it with the mindset of, I have to work harder than everyone else, and I have to, no matter who you are, even if you're the best person in the room, I have to work harder than I worked yesterday, and always be comparing yourself to yourself yesterday instead of to everybody else in the room. And it doesn't matter if you're technical or not. Just work hard. Focus on what's in front of you.
All right. And if you want other tips and tricks, reach out to me. I can have a one-on-one, and I have some others for you. Anthony, another Anthony that we have with us, Salazar, wants to know, those of us targeting the November immersive will be taking the TAA before prep ends. So we would join the pre-course before prep ends, ? Is his question. If you pass the TAA, you would.
You could.
You could.
Yeah.
It's possible. If you pass the TAA, it is possible. You would be joining before prep ends.
I would advise you to, like, are there people taking the TAA before they finish module 1?
No. We have repeatedly told the students that we do not recommend anyone attempt the TAA who has not completed with comprehension modules 0 through 3.
Okay.
We have repeatedly said that. So if they're taking it, they possibly are retakers, or they went through the modules on their own and they're here for extra support or whatever, but they have made their way through the modules.
Okay.
To some extent.
Yeah, as long as you made it through your work in premium prep, then you can join us before premium prep ends. No problem.
Yeah, they're unrelated. They're related and unrelated. So whenever you take the TAA, if you are an accept, then even if you're still in prep, pre-course becomes your priority. It's no longer prep.
I'll set one required expectation. Don't leave premium prep without telling Kathy.
Yeah.
Or without whoever's in charge. Like, just make sure you say goodbye.
Thank you. Listen, we would love you to say goodbye, but frankly, if you are so thrilled that you're accept and excited to get started, you are forgiven for not saying goodbye. It's quite all right. We are as excited for you as you are for you. So it's quite all right. Pavlin, if someone doesn't get through the pre-course, does he still have to pay the $2K, the down payment? If they don't get through the pre-course, do they still have to pay the $2,000?
Well, like I said earlier, you just Venmo it to me and it's all good. I don't know the answer to that question. I am almost certain the answer is no, but I think there's a small, like, administrative portion of it that might be like $250 last I checked that doesn't come back. But I think you should talk to your enrollment advisor at the point of signing the student enrollment agreement, because I'm not a money person.
Yep. All financial stuff, your enrollment advisor. Reach out to them and ask them, do you know who your EA is? Cameron wanted to know how many digits of pi you can recite, but I don't know that we want to do that since we're 7 minutes over time, and it would take a while. We'll just stick with 314.
It would take a while because I know so many of them.
Yeah, but I'm giving you that, I'm giving you that honor. So we'll just stick with 314. And that way we don't have to worry about how many. Those were the last questions that were in chat. So why don't we, if you have other questions that occur to you after the fact, please put them in the questions channel and tag me, or in your private chat and tag me, and I'll get them answered. I would like you all to please unmute and thank Anthony for his time.
Hold on.
What?
Well, at
Anthony?
least let me try.
Oh, he's gonna
3.14159265. That's as far as I can go.
Now, you know, the problem is that unless any of us Google it, we don't even know if that was correct or not. You do realize that, right? Because I thought there was a 3 in there. Yes, it is recorded. That is quite correct. I thought there was a 3 in there.
The first number was 3. The first number was 3.
No, after the 3. But that's okay. It's, you know, so physics is just a hobby for me. It was not a vocation. So would everybody please unmute and thank Anthony for his time.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. Go ahead, Anthony.
Looking forward to seeing you all in Precourse.
Yes. All right, everyone. Back to coding awesomeness.